What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. This is King Wabi, and I'm here joined by Snorlax. And today we're going to go over the state of DeFi, how DeFi looks right now in 2023 compared to the bull market in 2020 and 2021. We're going to go over a plethora of things. We're going to go over some of these L1 chains like Solana, AVAX, and even some of these new L2s on ETH, how they're looking like and how the market is responding to them. We're going to go over the transactions. We're going to go over TVL. We're going to go over returning users, volume, all that good stuff. So if you're interested, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, and let's get into it, man. So Snorlax, I wanted to get into the meat of the bones here, man. So I'm aware that you got into DeFi really through things like Ohm Forks, man. So a lot of this high yield like leverage, even some of these farms were like leveraged, and you had these obscene APYs of 5-6 digits sometimes. So what was your experience like, man? And honestly, I wanted to know, like, how do you think DeFi is going to look like in the next bull market? Because it really seems that there's really no demand for DeFi at all, and some of these L1 EVM chains have just completely died off, man. I actually wanted to share some things with you. So if you take a look and we look at something like Solana, right? We take a look at the total value locked, right? Total peak was close to $10 billion, and it's pretty much depleted all the way back down to pretty much near all-time lows. We're lower than how we were in that summer drought in 2021, right? Then we go ahead and put volume. That's not really looking the best either. Take a look at revenue, not really looking the best either.
Current kind of market capitalization of DeFi is very reflective of the current state that you were showing, right? It's almost about to round trip, and really since that, just catastrophic Luna nuke that I know you're familiar with. DeFi hasn't been able to, it just hasn't been able to recover. And I think as a whole, it's in a really interesting spot, and it largely depends kind of like your optimism for the future of DeFi, I think really depends on kind of how you classify it right now, right? Because you have the on-chain games, you have GambleFi, you have MetaMask, your more traditional Uniswap stuff. And then you have DeFi 1.0. Your AAVEs, your MakerDAOs, your traditional DeFi that, the token prices are down pretty significantly from all-time highs. And I think, as far as traditional DeFi goes, there's a pretty clear regulatory headwind that seems to be increasing, right? We just got news that the CFTC was starting to target DeFi platforms. I think the implications of some of the charges that they brought about were a little bit brutal for the existing DeFi protocols, right? But then you have, like I said, you have Onchain, which has really allowed people to innovate and be building new products within crypto this year. And I think that ultimately, for DeFi to see a resurgence, Wabi, we're going to need to build stronger systems. And I think that's going to manifest itself in two different ways, right? You're probably going to have, it's not going to technically be DeFi, right? It'll be called DeFi, but it'll probably be more like CDeFi, heavily KYC'd, probably safer opportunities, safer returns, so it won't look as much like crypto. And then you still will have probably the traditional on-chain market, which will just be a complete degenerative Wild West, probably even more so if they actually bring KYC and regulations to DeFi in a more meaningful way over the next few years.
So when you talk about like CDeFi, right? Are you saying when we speak about things like KYC and all that stuff, are you also factoring in something like perhaps a on-chain credit score, sort of like before you connect your wallet to a website, it goes sort of into a queue where it's like, all right, has this user created any rugs? Have they participated in any rugs? Sort of like a background check, sort of like a pretty much KYC type of programming, man.
I'm sure we'll have, some sort of system like that. Look, in real life, you have a credit score. And if you're going to be credit, you can argue whether or not you think a credit score is the same as a social credit system, right? That's a completely different argument than what we're saying. But, as far as bringing it on chain, if you are going to be KYCing users and you're going to be bringing on institutional capital, a credit score is probably something that in some capacity is implemented in order to protect those people who are onboarding into the space.
So my AVAX still sharing, brother.
Let me get it up.
I have everything overlaid right here. You guys can see the revenue. You guys can see the users, transactions, and all those things. Revenues in yellow. New users are in. Gosh, man, that looks horrible, man. There haven't been any new users on AVAX the entire year. But as the saying goes, right? Fresh chart, new ecosystem. It's going to outperform everything else, right? So if you overlay that with revenue, give 1 second, guys. You overlay that with users, you'll see that it's a lot more active compared to what we went over with Solana and AVAX. And actually, man, one of these Gamblify products that you shared with our community, Sonko, actually started on Arbitron. So Snorlax, man, do you think that Arbitron might be that sort of Solana for the next cycle, as far as L2s, where you have these exciting dApps, right? ROB started on Sol. Radium and Serum sort of started, the L1 DeFi eco craze back in 2020, post DeFi summer. So do you think Arbitrum might be a front runner of, all right, here's what's to come for the next bull market?
I'll be honest, I've kind of gone back and forth with how I think that layer ones and the layer one trade is going to evolve from here. I think it's going to be easier to speculate as far as which ones outperform once Ethereum picks up steam again. But, given that Arbitrum is essentially, a proxy bet on the performance of Ethereum, I would imagine that would obviously benefit something like Arbitrum. And I love the fresh chart angle. Arbitrum could go lower, but ultimately it hasn't had its cycle yet. So you have to figure at some point it's going to have one. Whether this is the bottom here, I think we're trading around 80 or 90 cents on ARB, or if it's lower, I don't know. But I do, I still think Arbitrum is going to have some sort of bull cycle. I think, as far as how layer ones will trade in the future, given how large the valuations of a lot of the layer ones that are, retaining brain space, right, remaining relevant. And I really don't think there are that many. You could probably say just Arbitrum and Solana are the only chains outside of Ethereum that you really think about on a very consistent basis, right? At least as far as actually using them. And so I wonder if these companies, they do have large valuations, but that doesn't mean they're not valuable. And I think from that aspect, you could see these assets trade more like blockchain companies rather than crypto assets, if that makes sense in the future. So you'd have maybe a little bit less volatility, but still really good potential to bet on kind of the future development of the space.
Yeah, I think DeFi has to not try to be so complicated, and it just has to stick to the basics, right? You have your basic AMM. You can't be trying to fork sushi and uni, right, all the time, right? It makes it too complicated. And some of these protocols are starting to use like leverage pairs. They're starting to use like wrapped pairs, and we all know what happens with most of these wrapped assets, man.
We do.
It does not. It does not pan out well. At least not with the current innovation that we have right now, right? So you have your AMMs. You have like your borrowing and lending protocols, right? Keep it basic, right? So do you think something like farming would come back? Because I sort of think, the days of just clicking a few buttons and earning some yield. I think the alpha that the market has right now is that if you're an LP for a certain amount of time, you will lose money. Over a higher time frame, you do lose money. Mm-hmm. So I sort of think that there has to be this initiative where if you're a dev, you have to create something that's interactive, right? Or some people are calling it play to earn, but it's all really just a bunch of talk, like Web3, and like I want to see something tangible. So what do you want to see for the state of DeFi over the next like say 2-3 years, whenever you think the market peaks out? Like, do you think it'll just be
question, Wabi?
It'll be like same thing as always, click a few buttons. There's 3 months left in the bull run. There's all these high yield platforms that only last a week, and then everybody gets in the red. What are your thoughts, brother?
Well, that is a really good question, Wabi, because it's kind of tough for me to envision what I think the future of DeFi looks like. I want it to continue to look similar in the sense that, you have, right, you have permissionless access to send transactions with, other financial actors. I get to I have independence and autonomy over my own decisions. Really just, I think the overall freedom of custodianship and, um, that permissionless angle are what I love so much about DeFi, right? I mean, I've never had so much freedom and control over my money, and I want DeFi to be able to keep that essence regardless of the changes that come over the next few years. And truthfully, I don't know if we're going to be able to have DeFi in the same manner once regulation truly creeps in. But I know that if DeFi is going to survive, the whole reason that it spawned up, it was supposed to be a solution, right? Not just a vehicle to gamble. So I would love to see, solutions to some of those problems, even though we are going to get regulations. Happy medium solutions, I don't know. I think there's some sort of, I wouldn't say workaround, but I do think there's a compromise from a crypto native aspect to be able to keep a lot of the stuff that we love about DeFi, right? Because, I sure love using all this stuff, but if I lose a little bit of that freedom and I feel like I have to, just jump through all these hoops to be able to use crypto, then it's not going to feel the same, right?
Yeah,
that's what I would like to see from DeFi. The gambling, I think, is a very useful aspect that can be done on the blockchain, but I don't think that just looking at crypto purely as, a vehicle to gamble is ultimately going to be a positive, theme for the space to be viewed at from the outside in.
and so I also pulled up Optimism. Now that Coinbase has rolled out their L2 chain called Base, it's basically a fork from Optimism. And you see pulled up, man, TVL kind of going choppy, man, but the users are just been going parabolic almost the entire year, man. And when we're talking about things like regulation, when we're talking about things like regulatory clarity, I sort of feel that Coinbase is at the forefront for that, right? We do have other top exchanges that are really running away from things like regulatory clarity. They're not speaking to Congress. They're basically just giving excuses and all those things. And I kind of feel that people are undercutting what Brian Armstrong is going to do for the space over the next 10 years. And I really think something like an Optimism as well is going to stand the test of time, where it's not just going to be, this shiny new ecosystem that has been around, for a couple of months, and then 6 months after the bull market, it just gets completely wiped to zero and nobody ever returns. And I think for the next cycle, man, we're gonna have to have something more than just Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? And I think that the next projects that get into the top 20, because ultimately I believe stable coins are going to take up the top 10 for the most part. I think things like XRP, Doge, if it's still in the top 10 or what have you, I think those are inevitably going to be replaced by stable coins. And truthfully, after stable coins, I see things like layer 2 ecosystems on sort of maintaining that peg in the top 20. And given how widely Ethereum is used, right? What do people use to bridge assets? They use ETH. What are most stable coins built on top of ETH, right? So I sort of feel that it's not only going to be ETH, but it's also going to be the things that help create the ecosystem, man.
No, I agree. I think that stable coins, and this is kind of a hot take of mine, but I think stable coins are maybe the best innovation that, after Bitcoin, that has been created, for blockchain and for crypto in general, just because of the opportunity that it provides people in other countries, right? We talk a lot about the opportunity that you can get in DeFi, but I think the most clear way that people see a benefit is by holding, things like Tether and USDC, while their native currencies can be valued. So, and it also gives them access to dollars, because something that we as Americans kind of take for granted, but it's maybe not as simple as, just for them to walk outside and go to an ATM and get some dollars. But, I think from that standpoint, I don't think stable coins are going anywhere, but the extent of how stable coins kind of, develop is TBD.
Tommy, so before we wrap up, right, we've covered a plethora of things. We've covered what we've experienced in DeFi. We've covered some of the craziness that we saw during the bull run. We've covered, how are these platforms that went wild during the last bull run, how do they look like, and how do they compare to sort of these new, fresh chains, and also what we'd like to see over the next bull market, right? So, Tommy, if there was one piece of advice that you would give to anybody that's been wanting to explore DeFi, not just trade tickers, right? And if you look back, right, 2019, 2018, when I first got in, right, all you were really able to do was just trade tickers. And DeFi is sort of this wild west. So what would you recommend? Where should people start? And I'll start by saying, guys, check out our Discord, free 1 week trial right here on our website. Feel free to check us out.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, definitely check out the website first of all. But two things. First of all, be curious. There's so much opportunity in DeFi. Even when I feel like right now the liquidity is low and there's not as much, for big money, there's just really not that much opportunity. I think if you're being curious and you're constantly in the trenches and you're being reasonable about your expectations, opportunity will fall to you in time in DeFi. And being early is ultimately the biggest edge of the last few cycles that we've kind of seen in that space. And then the second thing I would say is don't be afraid to, reach out to other people. Don't be afraid to, form a group of friends that can go into that arena with you or that has experience in the arena, because DeFi is a little bit complicated. There are pitfalls, and having people who have been there before and are actively navigating it with you can be a huge help.
And the arena, man, that's the one who tells the stories. So, guys, we're going to wrap up here. Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you guys like what you saw, go ahead and give us a like and smash the subscribe button. We'll see you all on the next video. Thank you so much. This is King Wabi from Because Bitcoin, signing out.
Thanks, guys.